Travels and Traditions with Bert Wolf is brought to you by the BMW European Delivery Program, a way to experience the roads that BMW was made to drive. BMW European Delivery Program. And by Swiss International Airlines, flying to over 70 worldwide locations. Truly Swiss-made. Swiss International Airlines. And by Sherry Lehman on Park Avenue in New York City, offering wines for over 75 years, with an inventory of wines from all over the world. SherryLehman.com. And by the Signet Foundation, raising funds for those in need through art-related initiatives, contributions to UNICEF and animal welfare organizations. The Signet Foundation.
This is the second program in a series in which I team up with Steve Perillo to travel around Italy. Steve's grandfather started a company that eventually became the largest organization taking American tourists to Italy. This program is about the city of Florence, and to make it truly challenging, we brought along my youngest son. Steve thinks the two things that every tourist to Florence wants to see are the cathedral, which is called the Duomo. Name comes from Domus Dei, which is Latin for the house of God. They also want to see the baptistry, and I agree. The fresco on the underside of the dome depicts the Last Judgment. It was completed in 1579 and intended to be Florence's version of the work by Michelangelo on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. Most of the art created in Italy during the Renaissance was produced under a system of commissions. The church would announce that it was interested in having a nice little sculpture for a spot on the outside of a building. A guild, which was like a super powerful trade union, would offer to cover the cost. The guild would choose the artist, often after a public competition. Then the work would be created and donated to the church. In this case, it's a statue by Donatello. It represents St. George, the patron saint of the Armorers Guild. They were the guys who paid Donatello for the work. Of course, the Armorers Guild would like you to believe that St. George was standing there fearlessly because he was using one of their new shields, Model 1477, in bronze, available with or without the gold trim. Product placement was a basic part of Renaissance art. Directly across from the Duomo is the baptistry. Florentines claim that it was originally a Roman temple built to honor Mars, the god of war, who had just given them a hand in a battle against the Etruscans. In fact, it appears to have been built in the 500s, but it did use some old Roman stones. In 1401, the Woolmakers Guild announced a competition for the north and east doors of the baptistry. Ghiberti won. His north doors illustrate the life of Christ. The east doors present the stories of the Old Testament. When Michelangelo saw them, he called them the Gates of Paradise. Santa Croce was originally a Franciscan church, and at the time it was built, it was one of the largest churches in the world. It became the burial site for many of the most famous Florentines. The walls are lined with monuments: Dante, Michelangelo, Boccaccio, and Machiavelli. Since the 1300s, the area around Santa Croce has been the leatherworking center of Florence. and the Santa Croce Monastery was a big customer. The monks were in constant need of leather covers for their manuscripts. At the end of the Second World War, the Franciscan friars at the monastery teamed up with the Gori and Cassini families, who were master leatherworkers. Together, they created a school that would teach children who were orphaned in the Second World War how to make things in leather and earn a living. Laura Gori, the daughter of one of the founders, took us on a tour.
And this is what they make when they come for the short-term classes, which is this for the 3 hours class. And, they start selecting the leather with the color, the combination of colors. Then Carlo, which is a master craftsman, helps them punching the holes and tell them how to put it together. And imagine, for such a very plain item, it takes minimum 3 hours. Well, we have two parallel activities now. One is the school, which is here, as you see, which is now international. And one is the workshop and display rooms upstairs and down here, where the master craftsmen, with the help of the younger artisans, whom I select among the best of our students and enroll in our workshop, they produce the leather lines displayed upstairs in our showrooms.
For over 300 years, one of the most powerful families in Florence were the Medici. They appear to have gotten started in the farming area north of Florence. The name is the plural of medical doctor, and at some point that was probably the family profession. During the 1300s, they were very successful in the wool trade. It was okay, but they soon realized that the real power was in banking. They opened their own bank, which vastly increased their wealth. They also became extremely popular with the general public by supporting the introduction of a proportional tax. Imagine that, a banker suggesting that the rich pay more taxes than the poor. The biggest accomplishment of the Medici, however, was their sponsorship of art and architecture in Florence, which was made possible by their great wealth. During the Renaissance, the leading artist would only create a work of art after he had been paid. Masaccio, Donatello, Fra Angelico, even Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci worked without an accounts receivable department. The Medici were also great supporters of scientific projects. They hired Galileo as the science teacher for their children, and Galileo repaid the compliment by naming 4 of the largest moons of Jupiter after the 4 Medici children he tutored. How cool is that? In addition to commissioning great works of art, the Medici were serious collectors. It is their private collection that forms the core of the Uffizi Museum. The buildings that make up the Uffizi Gallery were originally commissioned by a member of the Medici family to house the city's administrative offices. Having everybody in one place gave him greater control. He even built a secret walkway that allowed them to walk between their private palace and the seat of the government without coming into contact with the people they ruled. Something like the private subway in the U.S. Senate. In 1737, Anna Maria Ludovica, the last of the Medici, donated the family's entire collection to the people of Florence. Today, the Uffizi contains the world's largest collection of Renaissance art. It is virtually impossible to walk around Florence and not be confronted with the Medici. And that includes the hotel where Steve and I stayed. The hotel is the Grand Hotel Villa Medici. It has an ideal location at the very edge of the historic center of the city. It's just a few blocks away from the Duomo and the baptistry, and the most important shopping streets. The hotel itself was built into an 18th century residence and still has much of that traditional character. And there's the bar. Now, every animal has a series of natural habitats, and one of mine is a hotel bar. The creation of certain drinks is associated with certain cities. The Bellini was created in Venice, Irish coffee in San Francisco, Manhattan's in New York. Florence created the Negroni. Count Negroni would come into the bar every day and ask for a drink made up of Campari, red vermouth, and gin. And eventually, they named it after him. Grazie.
Grazie, signori.
That looks good.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Cheers.
Cheers. Proust na zdrovnia. It's just the way my mother made it.
She
And
did.
drank it. One of the advantages of the location is that the hotel has a private garden where guests can relax. It also has a swimming pool, which is very unusual for Florence. The Villa Medici has a well-respected restaurant called the Lorenzo de Medici. Steve and I asked the chef to prepare a meal of typical Florentine specialties. He started with panzanella salad, then a potato pasta, and a Florentine steak. Florence is in Tuscany, and Tuscany is world famous for its wines. Accordingly, the hotel has an extensive collection of Tuscan wines. There's also the Conservatory restaurant that looks out on the garden. There are less than 100 rooms and suites in the hotel, which gives the entire property an intimate feeling. And there are two styles of decoration to choose from. One keeps the antique feeling of Florence. The other has a contemporary style. And one suite is actually listed as a landmark by the Italian Ministry of Arts. Ah, Lorenzo would have loved this place. The colors are quite wonderful. For over 700 years, Florence has been a world epicenter for craftwork, with particular skills in leatherwork, paper production, and clothing design. We've seen some of the leatherworking tradition in the Leatherworkers' School, and that's a great place to learn about the craft. But it is also practiced in dozens of shops throughout the city. One of the objects I admire is the Florentine treasure box. And Simon Tatti is a master at making them.
This is my third generation, my grandfather, my father, and me. And my grandfather started and learned from other master craftsmen in 1920s. And now I have the same process because I adopted from my grandfather and my father.
Strips of leather are soaked in water until they are soft enough to wrap around a wooden box. The box is then heated. The leather dries and hardens. Once it is completely dry, the leather is shined with wax and vegetable dyes in order to achieve the desired color and shine. In the final step, the wooden mold is removed and the leather box stands on its own. It's all done by hand and can take as long as 8 weeks. When Catherine de' Medici of Florence married King Henry II of France, her jewels were carried to Paris in hard leather boxes that were part of the leather crafting tradition of her home city.
Everything is only by hand, with only leather, and with the passion, time. To make these authentic boxes today is very hard because it's too much authentic.
We're heading into this place, Nicholas, because they make gloves and they're supposed to fit you very well.
Like a glove.
So we're gonna. Did you say
Hopefully.
Okay, hi.
Good afternoon.
that? We've come for our fitting.
Okay, thank you.
Is this a big hand?
Yes, large size.
What size is this, do you think?
9.5 or 10. You want to
Gee.
try one pair just for
8.5.
8.5? Yes. Try first of all in size 10. Just.
So what does that do, that thing?
This is to stretch the gloves in the finger because when the glove is new.
Is this the first hand that's ever been in the
Yes.
glove?
Then after you try the gloves, you use the gloves.
Yeah.
Is not necessary. This is just when the glove is new.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Push your elbow here. Thank you.
I do. I like the color.
In the winter fits much better the gloves because
'Cause the hands
because
are,
now the hand is little bigger than
Yeah.
this size 10. I think it's the right
Are they
size.
lined?
This cashmere line.
Oh, yeah.
It's a classic style for
This
men.
is beautiful.
Size 10 is your size.
All right, ready?
How do we know if it's a good quality glove and it's a good fit?
You try the gloves. Check first of all that has to fit correctly in the length.
Right up to the tip and
Yes.
solid there.
It's down. If you find the gloves that is too long or too short in the finger, it's not right size. To know if it's good gloves, first of all you have to know the leather, the kind of leather, because many gloves looks similar but it's completely different. Also the cashmere, the composition inside.
Anthropologists believe that leather gloves go back to the time of the caveman, and I assume that includes cave women. Apparently, whenever there was a situation where people wanted to protect their hands, they developed a glove. Gloves were even found in the tomb of Egypt's King Tutankhamun. You couldn't be a well-dressed knight at the round table, or anywhere else for that matter, if you didn't have a nice pair of gloves. Most gloves come in pairs, and you'd think that half a pair would not be particularly interesting. Well, guess again. Michael Jackson's single glove sold for just under $500,000. There's also a long tradition of making marbleized paper.
Hello.
Hi, Nicholas. How you doing?
Good.
My son Nicholas stopped in for a lesson.
Okay, let's go together here.
Hey.
So what we have here, see, this is a glue, and we use this material to decorate the paper following this old method. It was used by the bookbinders, you know? Let's start with the blue. You hold these, hammer, and we go on top. And all around. Let's go with another brilliant color first, as we did before. Keep going, like that. This is fine. You see, we have already a kind of pattern. Now, look, now we take just this simple item, and you go inside of this liquid. Then, in this part, ecco, you go with a different movement. Hold it here. Okay. You dip it in. You go to the right. You see? A new pattern came out. But you can change again. You can change again, and we can turn into a pattern that we call peacock. Peacock tail. Look. Now we have to transfer all of these onto the paper. You go down when I tell you. Hold it, hold it. Okay, down. Okay, now we lift it up a little. Ecco, hold it. Hold it. Ecco, and we did it. There we are. Leave it down, leave it down. Okay. Here we are. See? And you can make just one at a time. See, every piece, it's unique.
It's nice.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I like old-fashioned stuff.
See, Nicholas, this technique once, it was very popular. In the bookbinders, they used to use this kind of paper to cover the in-page of the books. So the beginning and at the end. Here you are, Nicholas.
Thank you.
This is your job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Florence is a good town for walking, which may have something to do with its long history as a center of production for shoes. In fact, there is a museum in Florence dedicated to a shoe designer. It's a private museum open to the public and dedicated to the history of the Ferragamo Company and its founder, Salvatore Ferragamo. They told me that that shoe was originally made for Marilyn Monroe, and some like it hot.
And they told me you can have it for $5,000.
They give you a discount if you buy the right shoe, too? He was an extraordinary talent. His anatomical studies of the foot led to a revolutionary technique for making shoes. Salvatore Ferragamo was the inventor of the platform shoe, and this is one he developed for Judy Garland. This shoe was created in 2010 for Angelina Jolie for her appearance in The Tourist. He made special shoes for Marilyn Monroe, Greta Garbo, Audrey Hepburn, Lauren Bacall, Sophia Loren, and Julia Roberts. In films, it was sound technology that made it possible for women to talk. But it was Salvatore Ferragamo who made it possible for them to walk. Well, that's a quick look at Florence, Italy. I hope you'll join us next time on Travels and Traditions. I'm Bert Wolf.
And I'm Steve Perillo. Hey guys, what about ice cream? I love gelato.
Yeah, Dad, we haven't done anything about gelato.
They're a tough crowd. I promise the next show.
For a printed copy of this show, send a stamped envelope and $3 to this address. Please mark envelope with show number. The same information is available free on bertwolf.com. Travels and Traditions with Bert Wolf is brought to you by the BMW European Delivery Program, a way to experience the roads that BMW was made to drive. BMW European Delivery Program. And by Swiss International Airlines, flying to over 70 worldwide locations. Truly Swiss-made. Swiss International Airlines. And by Sherry Lehman on Park Avenue in New York City, offering wines for over 75 years, with an inventory of wines from all over the world. SherryLehman.com. And by the Signet Foundation, raising funds for those in need through art-related initiatives, contributions to UNICEF and animal welfare organizations. The Signet Foundation.